So, Jubilee recently hosted a conversation between the far left and the moderate left. Now, this isn't the far left that goes on Piers Morgan or what you see online or in the streets. This is the far left with a nice sweater. They're trying to woo the moderate left and just show how the far left isn't that radical. It's just a big misunderstanding, man. It's right-wing propaganda that the left has gone too far. Let's watch how clueless, well-meaning Democrats are to the extreme people in their political party.
Step forward if you agree with the prompt. The far left made us lose the election.
All right, here we go. Who's gonna step up? Come on.
In the interviews, I did have a lot of people agree.
Ooh.
You think there might be an issue in your party
yourself.
when all of you are too afraid to step up and discuss the extremism on your side that led to a massive election loss?
So awkward.
Yeah, it's awkward, all right.
I think there are elements on the far left that contributed to like a sort of an optics that made us look a little bit more extreme than we actually were. So in that way, yeah, of course there was a little bit of contribution there. Was it the sole reason why? Of course not, no.
If you looked at it as like a pie graph, 70% is because of the far left agenda. I think there's just too many Americans that are too close to the center. And, you know, I don't have issues per se with what is considered the far left agenda, but
The Overton window of this country has shifted so far left where, do they have an episode talking to the right and the far right, the moderate right and the far right? The far left is politically acceptable to the point where he's like, well, I don't disagree with the far left. Can a person on the right say, I don't disagree with the far right, I just disagree with their implementation? So you're validating the ideology of the far left. The far left is communism. I don't know how you get around that. So we're epistemologically accepting the far left as being morally neutral or morally good. It's not inherently bad to be far left. According to the clueless Democrat, the only issue with the far left is that the people aren't ready for their message. This is why I say these are clueless Democrats. You're a useful idiot. You're granting their agenda and ideology. People just aren't ready for it yet, which is signaling to the far left or extremist left, or as they say, radical left, that, yeah, our ideas are acceptable, we just need to make them more popular. The right doesn't do that with the far right.
the big issue is if it's costing us national elections and the House of Representatives and the Senate and the Supreme Court and the White House, we have to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
I really think that optics are important because I don't know how it is for everyone, but personally when I would go on my TikTok or like any social media, I would see a lot of like Hamla HQ videos and a lot of things from like the Democratic Party, and it was giving a lot of like far left ideology, like viewpoints and the way it kind of portrayed itself. And it is good to rally up like support and stuff, but it also, I feel like, isolates those who do care about other issues such as the economy and other things like that. It turns people off because I think at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge that like there is a stereotype when it comes to the Democratic Party, and it's unfortunate, but when people see things that align with that stereotype, it ultimately kind of hits us back a bit. Not to say that there's not stereotypes everywhere, but like...
Yeah.
It's not like those stereotypes appear out of thin air. Those stereotypes of Democrats come from the progressives, the far left, their insane behavior. That's where those stereotypes come from. But go ahead and defend their ideology.
I mean, I think in general, what we're saying is that it's not that we disagree with a lot of the things that the far left believes in. It's so much more of the way it's communicated in their approach. And I think we see it in extremism in any capacity with regards to any issue. But obviously for us, I think it affects us more because it's like, well, gosh, I do agree with you in so many ways, but the way you're doing it is making us look so bad.
You see, with the extreme left, they want good things, but they're just extreme. How do they get those good things? Always through government intervention. But if it's the extreme right, you think of violence, you think of totalitarian authoritarianism, you think of racism, you think of xenophobia. None of these isms or obias ever apply to the extreme left. The extreme left is altruistic and just wants everyone to be taken care of.
And now can the disagreeer step forward?
Oh God.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard the word of the day was optics, optics, optics. And it's interesting to me, just a quick survey. Does anybody think that Biden is a far left president?
No.
Right, exactly. And if you look on Fox News, you look on any right-wing media, they're labeling him as a socialist. So the optics of like Kamala was too far left or she was going too much into progressive values, no matter who it is, the candidate's going to be labeled this crazy far left extremist.
I love how the people that call their political opposition Nazis, racists, fascists constantly are befuddled when Joe Biden isn't a socialist. I mean, we're just thinking of optics. Yeah, that's why you malign your political opposition, and then you were maligned in the same way that you malign your political opposition, and it cost you the election. They did it better than you did, and it probably eats you up inside. But this entire conversation is not going to hover around principles. Why would it? You would expect the moderate Democrats to have principles, but it's just going to be about optics and how you look. If that's the fulcrum of your conversation, you do not have principles. When I listen to non-leftist content, it's based around principles. It's not based around optics.
I think a culture war is real, and we did not start that. The left did not start that. With advocacy, the right created a culture war in order to focus on these issues that are marginal. They are putting the focus on these issues, not the left. Like, Trump ran an ad. It said, Kamala is for them, right? Like playing on the whole gender, non-binary, transgender rights thing, right? If we keep playing into these culture war issues, it'll just lose elections, because what Kamala did is go towards the right in order to fight against this label of radical, right?
You insane communist psychopath. First of all, you're the party of representing marginalized people. These marginal issues involve marginalized people brought to the mainstream conversation by the left.
The right created a culture war in order to focus on these issues that are marginal.
Second, the left didn't start the culture war. They just gaslit the country into thinking the Kyle Rittenhouse shootings and George Floyd death were racial, to the point where celebrity Mark Ruffalo called the kid diddler Joseph Rosenbaum JoJo and blamed the racist system for his death. November 19th, 2021, Mark Ruffalo on Twitter. We come together to mourn the lives lost to the same racist system that devalues black lives and devalued the lives of Anthony and JoJo. Hashtag reimagine Kenosha. In this very episode, they talk about how Hillary and Kamala lost their elections because of sexism.
You don't think there's a large sect of people that when they saw Kamala running or saw Hillary running, that was like, oh, that's a woman, I'm not voting for her?
No, I think they saw what she stood for as a woman, and then they played into, oh, she's also a woman.
Because let me tell you,
Biden ran a similar campaign, and he could be elected.
Touching on misogyny, we're doing an incredible disservice to women by saying that it's not your turn, you're not ready because the American people aren't ready for you. Because not only are there qualified women, which I'm sure that y'all would agree with, but those sentiments is what plays into those actions.
But that's not what I'm saying, Mason. I'm not saying women are not ready to be president. I'm saying it's time to acknowledge
well, the American people are sexist.
It's time to acknowledge the sexism of this country.
Yeah.
This country has an incredible culture of misogyny that's increased. Right now, the amount of misogyny that women have to overcome needs to be acknowledged.
But let's also look at it more granularly, right? If America was truly a democracy and not a constitutional republic, Hillary Clinton would be the president of the United States because she actually won the popular vote.
She won the popular vote and lost the Electoral College, and Kamala lost the popular vote.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So that was a different scenario, but Hillary, it would have been President Hillary.
But it's both. Like in both instances, it's two different ways in which this country has said, you woman, we do not want you to run.
Then when the right responds to these egregiously false claims, they demonize the right for responding. The right are being reactionaries when they react to the insane things that the left says regarding race and gender. They want their leftist movement to be decentralized and ominous so they can have plausible deniability for their allergic reaction to any accountability at every turn.
I really think Trump played into a populist message, and I sound like a broken record continuing to say that, but Trump identified you guys rightfully feel that you're being screwed over, it's the Democrats' fault. And he did a great job of messaging that over and over and over again for every single issue. And I think the Democrats need to learn from that playbook of properly villainizing the right instead of just saying, hey, we're not them, vote for us, everything's gonna be fine, everything's okay, inflation's going down, y'all will survive as long as you vote us in again. We'll save democracy.
Well,
I love how they're pure rhetoricians and have no values. The problem isn't that they're villainizing the right, they're just not properly villainizing the right. Villainism didn't work this time, we just didn't do villainism correctly. The whole point of villainizing the other side in a two-party system is to say, hey, we're not them. That's the point of villainizing the other side. You're not talking about principles, you're just talking about rhetoric and optics, like a narcissist. How can we make ourselves seem better so everyone can learn that we like them? You sound like an alien trying to talk to the humans properly.
but the Republicans have done a good job of coming up with boogeymen for people to blame their problems on. What I've realized is Americans do not want to look in the mirror and blame that guy for their problems. So it's trans people, it's these immigrants, you know, and we don't have good boogeymen. You guys brought up Mark Cuban a few times, and I think we're off on this on the left, because I know it sounds weird, but Americans like these billionaires. Look at Elon Musk. Like they look at these guys as rock stars, and we here bash them all day long. And I understand, I support the wealth inequality is ridiculous, but Americans don't make that connection. I think we gotta really chill, pump the brakes on attacking these billionaires, because it's just not resonating with the American people. We can come up with a boogeyman. I don't know what that is right now.
Well, our boogeyman is Trump.
This is such raw, uncut sociopathy. They have a boogeyman on the left, and they keep just chasing a boogeyman, which a boogeyman means it's something that's fictional, that's not there. But I love the idea where it's like, yeah, we also have to find something that's not there. They're finding something that's there. It's the marginal issues that you people brought up that they are not letting go and not letting you run away from. But then I love how this dude chimes in and says, well, Trump is our boogeyman. So you're admitting that the threat doesn't exist? Because that's the only way it could be a boogeyman.
And we've heard so much negativity ad nauseum, just day in, day out, minute by minute about Trump. Oh my God, Trump, you know, farted in his office. I mean, literally, it's like the dumbest stuff you just hear all day long about Trump. I have zero love for Trump, but I get so tired of hearing about all the things that he does wrong from the mainstream media. I can see why most people are just seriously like turned off. Like, if they're actually attacking this man as much as they do, he must be something special. Yeah. I can almost see that rationale going on in the mind.
And that's what they do in cults too. Like that's part of like the more we're attacked, the better we're doing because we're on this path and the non-believers don't attack. Like it's such a heavily studied, it is psychological. He is kind of brainwashing people a little bit, but it's working.
Just so I have this straight, from the progressive Democrat, she said a sign of a cult is for people to think, oh, since the more we're attacked, the better we're doing.
And that's what they do in cults too. Like that's part of like the more we're attacked, the better we're doing.
Does that feel like Black Lives Matter in 2020 at all whatsoever? Does that feel like the Democrat Party in general, constantly in perpetuity, self-victimizing? To the point where Jussie Smollett made up a hate crime that was made against him? Saying there's a trans genocide? But no, if the right brings up actual grievances in response to the left, then they're the ones that are self-victimizing. So this is the programming right now to a moderate Democrat. They're like, hey, you see how the right's doing that? I mean, but it's working. I mean, do you see how they're brainwashing people? But hey, I guess it's working, right? Yeah, she's describing what the far left does, saying the right does it, and saying it works when the right does it. That's brainwashing. She's talking about brainwashing as she's brainwashing.
Because we're on this path and the non-believers don't attack. Like it's such a heavily studied, it is psychological. He is kind of brainwashing people a little bit, but it's working.
Yeah, I think, you know, it took me a minute to come over from there, and it was begrudging, to be honest with you, but I do think it's the truth, and I think it's, Guy, I think you said it very, very well. I think a big part of it is messaging. You know, energetic, emotional sound bites and talking points work, unfortunately, you know, and I think, especially to the average person who's too busy working a 9 to 5 to really be overly politically educated.
Oh yeah, dude, totally. That's your issue. That's the issue with the left is that they're not emotional enough and not performative enough when they're talking about things. You know, the bleeding heart left is notoriously known to be very stoic in their delivery of their political messaging. You're delusional. Now watch this soliloquy, this one-man show of a defense of Biden that no one else was willing to do.
Biden was a great president.
It's a lonely walk.
Yes, I think when people look back at the history and what happened with Biden,
It's a one-man show.
appreciate him a lot more. This is a guy who got us through the pandemic when
It's an
people were
SNL
not so
monologue.
hopeful. He was able to corral Congress and get bipartisan legislation passed. I mean, infrastructure bill, $1 trillion worth of infrastructure to upgrade our bridges, our tunnels, something that we've been needing for decades. A guy who brought back manufacturing to America with the Chips and Science Act. You know,
This
just
looks like a
solid
struggle
leader
session.
when people were looking for that. So I think Biden had a brilliant
It seems like he's
presidency.
being held
It's
at
sad that our
gunpoint,
fellow Americans
where
aren't
he
gonna reward
drew
him
the short
for that.
straw
But
and has to defend
that's
the great
times we
leader
live in
that
now.
failed.
Maybe he should have dropped out, you know, earlier and given someone, passed the torch a little earlier, but
I'm sorry, wait a minute. Why should Joe Biden have stepped down and passed the torch a little bit earlier? The right wing was saying he wasn't mentally fit to be president for years. The left gaslit the right into just saying that as a tactic. And then all of a sudden, the most popular president in US history decided to drop out a few months before the election for no official reason to this day. What are the history books going to say? Yeah, he was the most popular president in history, and then, one day, for no particular reason, he just stopped running. According to him, Joe Biden put Kamala Harris in an unsavory position because Joe Biden knew a year out that he wasn't fit to serve. Also, he was a great president. Wow, imagine what Joe Biden could have done if he was mentally fit. Imagine how much even he would have done an amazing job if he was mentally there.
so look, the prompt is she's a terrible candidate. Was she perfect? No, but she was thrust into an impossible situation, in my opinion. She had 107 days, and some of you guys have made the argument, you know, giving her some credit. And I think Biden is the one to shoulder the blame because he should have known a year out, hey, maybe I'm declining a bit and I shouldn't run again. I love Biden. I think he did a wonderful job. He governed us through the pandemic. He passed a bunch of legislation that will help us for the next decade.
To wrap up this video, the left can accuse the right of being racist, homophobic, transphobic, Nazi, sexist, and fascist all they want. It turns out the fascists were acknowledging the reality of Biden's mental decline his entire presidency, while the entirety of the left, including those closest to Biden, denied reality. The extreme far left are considered a legitimate, well-meaning political party that just comes off a little too abrasive for some reason. The moderate Democrats openly admit to supporting their far left ideology. The only issue Democrats seem to have with the far left is that the general public just don't agree with them yet. They just can't see how much the far left wants to help them. And maybe they will in time. The far left aren't too extreme. And if they are, it's not a big deal. And if it is, it's for your own good. The Demon's Prayer. Have a good one.